Welcome to Electric Evolution Recharge, the podcast that electrifies your mind and sparks change. I'm your host, Liz Allan, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this electrifying journey. In our Recharge episodes, we dive deeper than we've done before into the realms of innovation, sustainability, and the electrifying future that lies ahead. So join us as we embark on this electrifying adventure. Tune in to recharge your curiosity and let's ignite the electric evolution. So I'm very excited because today on the podcast, I've got another podcaster that I'm interviewing and I'm so excited. Gary Comerford from EV Musings. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. This is just, he's a fellow Yorkie from the next town to where I was born, from Huddersfield, and I'm Halifax. So I love this. So thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's great to be on here, especially with a fellow Yorkie. It's bizarre. We go all over the world, but when it comes to it and we meet each other, we always either know somebody in common or we're from neighbouring towns. It's just completely bizarre. Yeah. My next door neighbour here is from the same town that I came from.
God.
And I'm down the other end of the country,
It's madness, isn't it? Oh my goodness. Right, so you've got to tell me to start off with, how long is it? So we met, right, let's just go back a second. We met for the first time when we were doing I was doing with my husband, the London to Brighton leg of the London to Brighton to Paris EV rally, didn't we?
That's right.
In fact, you were outside the car when my husband was a bit annoyed with something, which was probably not for pleasant ears. But anyway, that was when we met, and we also had a chat when we were in Brighton, and then we met again at Blenheim, didn't we, for EV Live, which was brilliant. It was really lovely because I feel like I've kind of got to know you over time, and because we're Yorkies anyway, we're just like that, aren't we? But tell me why you started EV Musings in the first place. So your podcast has been going a fair while, hasn't it? Just give me a bit of background to why you started it.
I got my first electric car in 2018. And like a lot of people, I did a little bit of research. There wasn't a huge amount on the internet at that moment because it was still fairly, posh word of the day, nascent.
Ooh la la.
Oh, yes. And when I got into the car, I had loads and loads of questions. So as I say, I've done an amount of research. I borrowed one from the Electric Vehicle Experience Centre in Milton Keynes, rest in peace.
Oh, yeah.
And I worked out that the car that I borrowed was the one I was going to use. It fulfilled my requirements. And then, of course, you get one and it's, oh, well, hang on, I've got 2 charge ports on the front of this. Why have I got 2 charge ports? Because it runs on CHAdeMO. CHAdeMO? What the hell's CHAdeMO? Why is it different to the other ones? What's the other one? Well, that's AC. And I suddenly realised, well, if I have all these questions, other people who are getting into electric vehicles will also have the same sort of questions. So I got together with a fellow electric vehicle driver, Simon Rowe, who is the EV side on Twitter and YouTube. He's actually got a YouTube channel more focused on electric skateboards, electric one-wheels, electric unicycles. So if you're into that sort of thing, he's got lots of great content out there. But we got together and we did a couple of episodes of the podcast and we started talking about different things related to electric vehicles. We did a 1,000-kilometre journey in one day in his BMW i3.
What?
Oh, yeah. People, you can't do long distance in an electric vehicle. Well, actually, you can. And we went, from, where did we start? Milton Keynes. No, we started his place in Hitchin. We went up the East Coast. We went up to Sunderland, across to Carlisle, down the M6, to Milton Keynes, back around there. 1,000 kilometres. Took us 14 hours or whatever it was. It wasn't particularly quick. But we did it, and we didn't have any charging problems. So, well, that's good. That's another episode for the podcast. And after a couple of episodes, Simon decided he wanted to focus more on his YouTube channel, and that was fine. So I've sort of run with it since then, and I'm now up to 180 episodes. And my next batch of 20 starts August 28th, and that will take me up to 200. And that's my story in a nutshell.
My goodness, that is a lot. I'm such a newbie compared to you. So hang on, so that was in 2018 when you started it then?
I got the car August 2018. I started the podcast probably, I think it was March or April 2019.
Oh my goodness me. That right. Okay, so I've got a long way to go to actually get to get there. But I must admit the reason why I started this podcast was exactly for the same reason, but I suppose it was also because of the fact that we wanted to kind of and I always say this, it was because we wanted to learn about all the things that we wanted to do in the house, like, kind of making sure we were insulating it better. And actually we wanted to get the solar panels put on, which we've had done. We wanted to get the battery, which we've had done. We wanted to get a charger at home, which we've had done. And then we've got an EV. So the last few months have just been a bit of a whirlwind for us, to kind of, it's just been a massive, massive learning curve. So it's amazing. It's just amazing. So that's why I wanted to make sure that other people kind of heard my voice, or the people who I'm talking to, so that they could understand what that journey could be like. And that there are some kind of ups and downs and things, but overall it's been relatively okay. Anyways, you're going to ask me a question.
I am.
Now, aren't
So
you?
before, obviously, you've gone through this process of getting a charger installed and getting the solar panels and that, and I've done that as well. But I'm sort of interested from an electric vehicle point of view. What were the key stress points that you experienced, or you thought you were going to experience, prior to taking delivery to the car of the car? You've got the Hyundai Ioniq, I think, the 38 kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
Lovely
Yeah.
car, the wind knife. So before you got that, what was it that was concerning you? Was it, for example, I'm not going to be able to do long distances? Was it, I'm not going to be able to do public charging? What were the worries that you had?
Do you know, I think I was quite open-minded about it. I think the biggest thing for us was actually over a period of time in the run up to it, we did lots and lots of research. I'd never heard of it called the wind knife, but you're the second person. That's Nick Hewlin from Chargy also called it that, and I was like, oh my god, okay. But I suppose the biggest thing was, it's such a change for us to go from a petrol car to something very, very different. It was, and we'd stayed with VW for some time. I know you've got an ID3 at the moment, haven't you?
Yeah.
So we'd been with VW for a while. So, and actually I took lots and lots of cars out for test drive. And actually Rich, my husband, he's not particularly a car person. He would rather take public transport. So in the run up to this, it was kind of trying to understand, right, which was the right car for us. Was a lease a good thing? Was kind of actually buying it outright? If you buy a brand new car, it's an EV, they're so expensive, and we've never ever bought brand new. But kind of alongside that, a lot of it was, right, okay, so what does this actually mean for us as a family? What are we going to have to do differently that we're not currently doing? So with my petrol, with the Golf, I knew I could get 520 miles to a tank, unless I put the AC on if it was hot. But at the time we're recording this, it's really not been hot at all, has it? Actually, although I've got sunshine outside the house today. So it wasn't. It was understanding as well. So how many charging apps do I actually need to have on my phone? And I think I probably got about 20 on there at the moment. So it's kind of like, right, what? Because I'm a bit of I'm anally organised. So before we actually got delivery, and I knew that I was going to be starting long journeys up to Coventry. The first one was only down to Bournemouth, so actually that was quite a baby journey, but that's another race. That was a very, very first experience that was very, very stressful for me. But I put myself under stress on that first journey. Mm-hmm. But overall, it was kind of understanding everything. So even things like, we've got a Zappi charger and we've got solar panels, but we've not had very much sun. So what tariff is the best for us to be on for our Zappi, so that actually when we haven't got any sun, we've depleted our battery, when do we charge it? How much is it going to cost us? How much is it going to cost us on a public charging network? So and when we got the car, and like I say, this is like 3-4 weeks in, we're only just kind of getting used to my driving, because I'm the one who drives it most. And obviously, there's this thing called the GOM that I was going to talk to you about, and we need to talk. We need to talk about the GOM, because the GOM. You're the one who introduced me to that word, the guessometer. I mean, my God, It is so true, isn't it? Like normally, when you're in when I was in the petrol car, like I said, I always set the trip back to zero.
Hmm.
So when I filled up with petrol, I set the trip back to zero, and I was looking at the average amount of miles that I got. So like I say, I knew I got 520 around that. If I'd done less, I knew I'd had a bit of a crap journey, or I'd had, like I say, had the AC on. But for the GOM, oh my good God, I've got to say that was ever so stressful. Just actually until it got used to my driving style, actually. So okay, what does that actually mean? What do I need to do to make sure that that is accurate? So I'd be pressing things and going and looking, I'm kind of driving and I'm pressing the AC and going, oh, it's gone down by 5 miles and things like that. It's so that's some of the stress I was experiencing.
But it's ironic because, as you say, nobody has a GOM on a petrol car or a diesel car.
No.
A lot of people do what you did, which is I'll reset it to zero, and I know I'm gonna get 500, but you're not, because in winter the 500 might only be 400. I had a guy I used to work with, and he religiously tracked every gallon of petrol, and he graphed
I'm not
it.
quite like that.
He graphed it over the years. When he graphed it, his marks per gallon over the years, it went in a proper sine wave. You could see where where the summer was, where the winter was, and the difference was, I mean, fairly substantial. It was 20-30% difference between winter and summer. So, talking about having a GOM on a vehicle, it's a guessometer because it just makes a guess at what you're doing. And I think I said on one of the podcasts, with an electric, you can be at the bottom of a hill and you can do 2 miles up the hill, but because you're going up the hill, the GOM will drop 10 or 12 miles. And everyone goes, oh, it's a panic. But then you get to the top and you go down the other side and suddenly you've got quite a lot of those 10 or 12 miles back.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you can't do that in a fossil fuel car.
No, you can't.
You do the mileage, you'll lose the distance because you're having to do more work, or the engine's having to do more work going up the hill. You're not going to regain anything going back down the other side of the hill. So you're worse off. And this whole thing about the 500-mile range on a car, I know a lot of people go for it, and I know you said that that's what you had on your old Golf. But back in the day, my father, because he was one of these people who liked to flaunt his money a little bit. Not that he had a lot, but he bought a Jaguar, and
Oh la la.
Oh yes, it had a 20-gallon fuel tank, and it did 12 miles to the gallon.
Oh God.
240-mile range. Yeah.
Oh, that's a gas guzzler.
But the vast majority of cars in the UK, electric cars in the UK, will do 200, 240, 250 miles in range. And that's the problem. True. But a Jaguar back then that did 240, no, it's just uneconomical. And I just find that quite an interesting situation. Yeah.
No, you're right. I suppose it is just because it is so different. Seeing, so I've just had over the last 2 weeks, I've just had 2 journeys up to Coventry and Nuneaton and back. So I go to Nuneaton first and then onto Coventry, kind of the second day, and stay over wherever. And actually, so the first time I drove to Coventry, we kind of, and I wrote about this on a post last week on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. We'd only charge the car up to 80%. Now, this is something else I wanted to talk to you about anyway, but we charged the car up to 80%. Now, because it was my first long journey, and it's 92 miles from Caversham, where I live just outside Reading, up to Nuneaton, I was freaking out. I really was, because the guessometer was saying that I had something like 111 miles, and I was just like, oh my God, but I can't, because this was the first day on this new contract work that I was working on. And I just didn't need that extra undue stress. But I built in the one thing I do, even with the way my brain works, I'd kind of built in a lot of time at the front end. Because I always build that in case there's any kind of accidents on the motorway or anything, any kind of traffic jams or whatever, so I built in enough time that actually I worked out that to give myself peace of mind, I could stop at Warwick Services. I knew that Warwick Services had a grid serve. Sorry, Sam Clark and Toddington. A grid serve charger. That's a new one, isn't it? Grid charge. But and so I stopped there, and I was back up to 80% within 15 minutes. I had enough time to just go have a bit of a comfort break, go and get myself a bar of something that I shouldn't probably been eating, and then come back to the car, and it was up to 80%. Now, I tell you something that I hadn't ever noticed before, because it's such early days, that when it gets to 80%, that noise stops. You know, the real kind of, and it's not loud, it's just kind of like, and actually I was like, oh, what's happened there then? And I looked on the dash, and it was 80%. I was like, oh, that's bloody amazing.
And what is it? What is the noise? What is the noise that's stopping?
It's stopping when it gets to 80%.
But what is the noise?
Well, it just stops making the noise. I don't know. What is the noise?
It's the cooling fans, isn't it?
Okay. Okay.
So you could have cooling fans on the vehicle, and you can have cooling fans on the charge unit as well.
It was the charge unit that was stopping.
And the reason is because when it gets to 80%, I bet your charge rate dropped, didn't it? So
yes.
Yeah. So it's not pushing out as much energy. So it's not getting as hot, so it doesn't need the fans on, and that's why it cools down.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the speed of that was amazing.
And this is the thing that a lot of people who don't drive electric vehicles get concerned about. Oh, but, what happens if I've only got 10 miles on the gom and my auntie in Scotland goes into hospital and I've got to drive up there? How long am I going to have to sit and wait for a charge? And there's this sort of impression or understanding that you're going to have to spend hours plugged into a charger to do that. And you've just proved that, no, you don't really. You can do, I think the longest I've ever spent at a charger, 35 minutes. No, let me clarify. I've spent 50 minutes at a charger, but that's because I got distracted chatting to somebody else about electric vehicles, completely lost track of time. And when I came back, I was at 95 or 98% or whatever it was, which I never do. But if I'm doing a journey and it's just me, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. If I'm really, really low and I know there's a long way I've got to go before the next charger, 30, 35 minutes. So it's not this hour and a half, 2 hours, 5 hours, or whatever people think. And again, it's a mindset that people have. And you've got to have a little bit of faith, a little bit of confidence, or you've got to have sort of these conversations between people like you and I, where we go, well, actually, no, it seems as if it could be a problem, but in reality, it isn't.
It's not. Yeah. Do you know what? Once I'd actually experienced that kind of original sort of fear, and then gone, right, okay, grid serves there, I know they work, let's get on it, and I was, and actually, do you know, the best thing was that 20 minutes, just that 20 minutes meant that I still was early to my appointment, because I built that bit of time in. And I think it is, and I do try and do that anyway. I'd rather sit in the car park where I'm going to go and eat my breakfast, because I take my breakfast with me, because when you're setting off at like 6:45 in the morning, I'm not going to eat my breakfast before I go, so actually it was fine. It just meant I had 15 minutes to eat my breakfast rather than 40 minutes, so it was just behaving that bit differently. And what I did do on the way back, and I know me and you have had this conversation about charging to 100% and going straight away, so that's something I'd like to kind of discuss with you. But actually, so I found an Instavolt charger through somebody that was so I was working with GPs over the last couple of weeks, and somebody who was at the practice basically said, I've seen that one of those chargers. She said, I wondered why they were there. And she said, oh no, it's near Tesco's in so-and-so, which is kind of somewhere in Nuneaton. And it was like 5 minutes drive away from where we were. And it was in a jet. The irony was it was in a jet petrol station, which did make me chuckle. Just the irony. So I literally, because I know I know that Instavolt works again, so I literally hooked it up. This time I used the app. Oh no, do you know what? I didn't use the app. So I've got the app, but I used contactless because the thing that I found hard is understanding, and this might just be me being a bit thick, which charge point is which. It doesn't tell you. There's not a badge. This is number 1. This is number 2. So I was like, well, I don't know which one it is. How do I know? Oh, I'll just use contactless. But it worked. And I sat in the car, and I actually had enough time to go across the road, get a packet of crisps, come back, eat my sandwich. And I actually waited. I think I was there probably about 45 minutes for it. I did let it go to 100%, but I set straight off back. No, but I'll tell you what it was. I wanted to see it at 100%. So that I knew that 90 odd miles, I knew what I'd have when I got back home. So that next time when I set off, I knew what I needed before I set off. It was just me doing a little trial and working it out, But actually, so please, and I know we're supposed to be taking it in terms of questions, but I just need to ask you this question. How do I know which charge point is which on the app?
I suppose it depends which app you've got. It depends what sort of charges you've got. I charge a reasonable amount. I don't charge a lot when I'm on public charging. I do most of mine at home. But when I am away, I'm split basically between Osprey and Instavolt. A lot of the Instavolt charges that I've gone to are the old charge. Well, say the charge point ones. So they're not the big grey ugly ones, and they're not the Alpatronic ones that they have at the Banbury hub, but they're the charge point ones, slightly curved at the front, got charge point written on the top. Nice big screen in the middle, and at the bottom on there it tells you the charger description.
Okay.
So
is it one of those 50-50 ones that you have to keep waiting for 5 minutes till it comes round?
No. It's the later one than that. It's the later version of that. But it says at the bottom. So if you're at Banbury, it might say Banbury 001. Or next door, it might say Banbury. Well, actually, they call it Stroud Park, don't they? So it'd be Stroud Park 001 or Stroud Park 002. You can then look at that on the app and do that. Yeah. So it's
because it wasn't when me and my friends went to Bournemouth about 3 weeks ago, and it was literally 2 days after I got the car, and I can't tell you how stressed my stress levels were off the charts. Absolutely off the charts. We got the car on the Tuesday. We were all going away on the Friday, and I was just like panic attack, the whole 9 yards, everything, just because they are non-EV drivers going in an EV for the very first time, and I didn't want to cock it up.
So the question then is, why did you not go out and test public charging by yourself between the Tuesday and the Friday?
Because I was so busy and I couldn't find a time to blooming do it. So you're right. No, but you know what? It wasn't that, Gary. It was actually the whole, right, okay, I've hardly driven this. I'm not used to it. I've driven a VW for years. These are friends I've known for a very, very long time. And it was more about the fact that I wanted them to have a good it wasn't just the charging. The charging was a tiny portion of that bit. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'll tell you about that in a second. But it was more the getting them in the car and seeing me feeling confident with it. It was too early it's such a big, for me, even just, it sounds silly, but like I say, because we'd driven Golfs for years, it was a massive change for us to go into a bigger car that was a saloon and an EV. And it was probably just, like I say, my brain works in a very specific way, and it was just kind of my sort of insecurity about how I'd be able to manage the situation. But once we were on the way, it was fine. And actually, so I found another Instavolt charger. So this was the first one we went to. And the story, actually, I've kind of given away what brand it was, so my apologies on this one. But we went into in Boscombe. There's a public, a multi-storey car park with no signage whatsoever. So we drove in and we were coming on the way back because my thinking was, right, okay, to start off with, I want to make sure that we're charged up. We're going to have a cup of tea in the morning before we left anyway. So let's charge up while we're having a cup of tea. And then, because I didn't want it to be, I knew there was only a couple of charges in, I can't remember where it was, Winchester Services. And I just thought, I want to make sure it's smooth, because if those are kind of taken up and we have to wait, then that'll be a little bit annoying. So, and I knew that the charger close by was empty. I could see it on Zap Map. Drove there, and actually I sat at the wrong charger, didn't I? I was trying to charge the one next door. Dope. Because I hadn't worked out which one was which. But then I realised that the first one was out of action anyway. There was nothing on it. So I did put it on Zap Map that this one isn't working, kind of thing. I hadn't got around to doing it on the Instabot, but I did that when I got home. But again, it was because my friend was stood next to it going, this one's doing something. And I ended up reparking and starting the charge. So so that was, and when we got it when it was charging, everybody went, yay, we've done it, and it wasn't, and actually none of us made a big thing of it. It was just something I was learning and they were helping me with. And actually, that whole experience was, it was a tiny little problem. It was more annoying the fact that there was no signage, and it was my friend that actually spotted where the charger was. So we had gone up a floor, and then we were kind of going round, and then she went, oh, I can see them right at the other side. So we had to go up a floor again, come back down 2 floors, till we had to go back to that. So it was that kind of trying to.
And it's interesting because
they're there. I know you're there.
If you go down any high street,
I don't know where the hell you are,
or any main road.
Okay then, Gary, tell me, as a new EV driver, what should somebody like me? What do I need to know as a new EV driver?
I suppose the short answer to that is everything you don't already know, or everything that you haven't already looked up. The key thing I always try and impress upon new drivers is it's not just, well, it's the same as driving a petrol car, but I've got a different way of charging it, of filling it. It's a complete different mindset change. It's, you've got a steering wheel, you've got pedals, you drive it the same way as you drove your Golf that you used to have. But in terms of how you actually operate it, you've got to look at things like, well, how can I use regen to my advantage?
Yeah.
What about the different power settings? We all like to do the old Grand Prix of traffic lights and get away from the guys in the Porsches next to us who really get confused when they see a little mini electric beating them off at the lights, but that's what happens. And then there's the whole thing of, we've come from a mentality where you've got 500 miles in a tank and you stop off at a petrol station and it takes you 3 minutes or whatever to fill up and you drive off. And while there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that, it's a mentality that's been forced upon us because that's the only way it works. And I've said this before on the podcast. If I said to you, there's a brand new Apple iPhone, it will do 2 weeks of charge, 2 weeks of operation on one charge, but to fill it up, you've got to go to the Apple store and pay a fortune. You'd look at me as if I'd grown an extra head. But that's exactly how we deal with petrol cars, and it's not the way we deal with electric cars. We've got multiple different ways of charging them, multiple different locations. As I said before, the only place on the face of the planet that you can fill a petrol car is at a petrol station. Electric cars, well, Starbucks, Costa, the genuine charging stations, the motorway service areas, my front garden,
McDonald's,
the back of the Holiday Inn, a little place just outside Gatwick Airport, the Cotswolds holiday cottage that you've rented. These are all places that you can charge a car that you can't fill a fossil fuel car. So it's a different mentality. And as long as you look at it from the point of view of 90% of the time, your car is going to be completely stationary. So why not use that
Yes.
to charge it rather than, right, I've even though my car's been still for 90% of the time, I've now got to go and find a petrol station, and hopefully there's not a queue, but if there is, I'm going to have to wait around, and then I'm going to get in, and then I'm going to spend 3 or 4 minutes filling it up, and then depending on which petrol station it is, I might then have to go into the kiosk, and I might then have to wait behind the queue of people who've gone in to buy their milk and biscuits and Benson and Hedges and whatever. Then I'm going to pay, and then I can leave. And it's just a completely different mentality. And that's the key fundamental difference between driving electric and driving a fossil fuel car.
It's very true, isn't it? Yeah, because and yeah, because you can't really chuck a petrol tank in your in your front garden, can you? Whereas you can put, we've had our charge point. We're lucky that we've got a drive, and I know that there's 40% in the UK, 40% of people in the UK that don't have that opportunity. So we are lucky. But
let me jump in there. It's not actually 40%. It's 40% of houses or dwellings don't have the ability to charge, but not all of those dwellings actually have cars anyway. According to the RAC Foundation, 2022, it was actually, am I going to get the figure right here? 27% of people with cars don't have off-street parking. So it's actually a lot smaller than you think. And it's a subtle distinction, but it's very important because people look at it from, you've got 40% of the cars that can't charge, 40% of houses that can't charge. But they don't need to charge because not all of them have cars. You go to central London and ask how many people actually have a car. It's not a huge number.
No, exactly. And it's funny, now you're saying that. So my one of my friends, her son has just got a job over in Welwyn Garden City. But it's possible that he might, at the moment he's living with family there, but it's possible he might actually end up going to live in London, and they've got a little runabout for him to have. It's not electric, but it's still the same thing, isn't it? The fact that he probably, if he lives in London, he will not need a car.
And he won't have anywhere to park it anyway.
No, exactly. And there is that. So, and they, so they're going to deal with that as and when that happens, whether he decides to move to London or not. So yeah, that's really important.
Have you used AC destination charging yet?
Right, do you know what? I still get confused between AC destination charging. So that is the same as I would use at home, isn't it?
Yeah. Basically, if you're using the cable that came supplied with your car, that's usually AC destination charging.
Yeah, so I'm just proving to you that not everybody still gets the AC/DC thingy, right? So yes, in fact, on Tuesday I did. So I tried to do that last week with a 7 kilowatt charger at a hotel that I'm not going to mention, but I did talk about it on I kind of did an Instagram reel about this. So that's the one that I was saying about there, the spinning wheel of doom with the app. So I tried that one. And then this week I was staying at the Holiday Inn Express in Nuneaton, and I used theirs because I kind of thought to myself, I'm staying overnight. There's no point in me actually using. There was a couple of rapid chargers and there was a couple of 7 kilowatt AC chargers. So I put it on the AC charger and it was back up to 80% in 3 hours. So enough for me to get into the hotel, get myself sorted, go across the way to this little carvery, have some food, come back, and then take it off charge again.
It's interesting how food figures quite a lot in people's charging regimes, doesn't it?
Well, I realise now it's, is it before food or is it after food? I could have left, because my main thing was, I thought, right, okay, I've put it on there. I didn't realise, I suppose I kind of thought I was trying to work out, right, how many hours is it going to take me to get back up to 80%? I think I was at about 45%. Okay. Right. And obviously kind of connecting it, and the car kind of told me what percentage it was. And I just thought, well, I don't want it to be 100%. So my main thinking was, right, okay, if I'm only going to charge it to 80%, then I don't want to leave it actually overnight. I want to take it away from that charging, from that space, so that I don't block somebody else's ability to charge if they wanted to do that. So that's what I did, and I kept an eye on it. I looked at the app that I'd kind of was charging through. I looked at my phone app for the car, for the Hyundai, and double checked it just so I kind of knew, and it worked out perfectly, really.
So I'm very much of the opinion, and I've said it many times on the podcast, that AC charging is like the secret sauce that's going to make electric vehicles work better. Because if we're stationary for 90% of the time, you're in a car park somewhere, you're in your driveway somewhere, you're at work or wherever. If there's a charger you can just plug into, it doesn't have to be a fast charger. It can even be the same speed as a 3-pin plug, a 3 kilowatt charger.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that fast. But if you're there for 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, however long you're parked, especially if you're at work for most of the day, that's all you really need. And because you're leaving home fully charged and you're leaving work fully charged, and when I say fully charged, it may just be 80% rather than 100, but charged to the level that you want, you then don't have to stop on your way home, or you don't have to stop on your way to work. Therefore, you don't need a rapid charger, which means that we don't need to add a whole new range of rapid chargers around the country, and the ones that are there already are going to be used by the people who do need them. The taxi drivers of the world, the delivery drivers of the world, the people like our friend James Coates from Evely Mobile, who does 50,000 miles a year.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That sort of thing. So I'm not saying we don't need rapid chargers at all. We absolutely do. But if we make better use of AC charging, and we have more of those in all the car parks and places where people stop, and the tourist attractions, Chester Zoo, Eden Project, places in North Wales where people go and they park up, that's the kind of place where you need these chargers, so you don't need to use as many of the rapid chargers. That cuts down on queues, and it leaves them available for the people who really do need them.
Well, funnily enough, when I was in Coventry yesterday, and the person I was working with, I've only been going in there for a couple of weeks, and I kind of mentioned the fact that I'd charged up to 80% at the hotel before I left, and she went, "Oh, we've actually got a couple of chargers here." And I went, "Where? I didn't see them." And they were literally, she said, "Oh, there's one that they're round by the bins, round the side. One of them's covered by a bin, and the other one's got a bay that's free." And she said, "Well, it's kind of for people like you who want to charge, while you're here." And I was like, I wish I'd have known that. I'd have actually charged, because I was there for like 3 hours. That would have been perfectly a right amount of time for me. So I went, actually, do you know what? I'll do that next time. And I did go and have a look, and it was to do with the Coventry Council, but I couldn't find the app. So I'm going to have to go back next week and sort of ask her, well, so how does this work? Because I could see on the charger and I could see the name of it. I need to just dig into it a bit more. It should be easy, shouldn't it, really, to actually... I could tell there was an app.
And 3 hours at 7 kilowatts on your Ionic will give you 50%. So if you turn it with 40% and then you get another 50% when you're there, you're up at 90% on your way home.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of all I want to do. For me, it's about just knowing that the range I've got is enough for me to get home. Because I was going to say to you, so my husband was asking this question to ask you. So what happens if you run out of charge? I mean, obviously, I know you stop, but what does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean, so like if I run out of petrol, which did happen when I lived up in Halifax, my sender unit on my very, very, very old Vauxhall Cavalier at the time ran out, it stopped working, and I didn't always know how much petrol I had in. So, but at least I could push it, or not necessarily me. I would usually find somebody local to kind of push me into somewhere. But on an EV, what happens?
Well, the first thing, as you say, is when you run out of fuel, you stop. When you run out of charge, you stop. Now, the way they design electric vehicle batteries, and if you speak to our good friend Dr. Ewan McTurk, he'll tell you all about the buffers that they have at the top and the bottom, which basically means that when you're at 0%, you're not actually at 0%. There's still stuff left in the bottom of the battery. And that's not stuff that you can use. That's not charge that you can use to actually push the vehicle along. But it's there to protect the inner workings of the battery, because if it does get down to 0%, a genuine 0%, you basically cannot use that battery again. Yeah.
Oh,
so
God.
it keeps,
Okay.
And I forget where I saw. I've actually seen a battery that's gone down to that. It basically, there's a whole technical term, but it futzes it up. You know, it basically means that the chemical components that are in there no longer work together. So once it's down to a genuine 0% on a lithium-ion battery, it's dead. So the battery management system keeps a couple of percent there that you can never use, but it allows it to run down to 0 without actually messing the battery up totally. So when that happens, you've got a couple of options. You generally have to call one of the rescue services. Yeah, the RACs or the AAs or the Green Flag or whatever. And what they will do is they will come, and depending which service it is, they'll do one of two things. If with the RAC, they have portable chargers. So they'll plug you in at the side of the road, and it's a 7 kilowatt one. So it might be an hour, might be an hour and a half, whatever. And that will just give you enough to get to the nearest rapid charger. So you can then do a full charge. But if you're with the AA, and I had Edmund King from the AA on the podcast a couple of seasons ago, and we talked about this, they've developed a nifty little thing, which basically they attach it to your rear wheels, and then they hook it up onto the tow hitch on the thing, and they can actually tow your electric vehicle, because generally you can't tow electric vehicles because it freezes the wheels in place when it stops. But
so when you run out of charge, your wheels freeze then?
Generally, yes. I mean, they don't stop, but because it'll pull to a halt, and then when you put it into park, it puts the park brake on, and that will keep the wheels immobile. Yeah. So what the AA have got is, it's a device that one of their engineers literally cooked up in his garage, and it just bolts onto your wheel, and it basically allows a freewheeling attachment to your wheel. So even though your wheel is stationary, there's an extra wheel on the outside that moves, and they can then tow you to the nearest charging stop, and then you can plug in there. And that's actually a safer option, because if you're on the side of the motorway, you don't really want to be on there for an hour or an hour and a half charging up with all the traffic going past, especially if it's a smart motorway and you don't have the hard shoulder. So if they can get these wheels onto the back of you, get you off the motorway and onto somewhere safe in 15 minutes rather than an hour and a half, that's the safest option. So those are basically your two options. Get towed away or get charged at the side of the road.
But what you're saying, and I have seen a video of somebody, and I can't remember who it was. It was one of crikey, it's probably a couple of years ago. I think again Nick Hewlin shared something with me, and it was basically about people who were trying to take their cars to as far as they could go, you know, charge wise, before they run out of charge. And what happened then, you know, it was kind of racing against, or not racing, but looking at the sustainability aspect. But how far could a Renault Clio, not Renault Clio, a Renault Zoe, get the right one, Liz. Yeah, get a Renault Zoe versus a Nissan Leaf go without having to charge. But then there was one of them that went the furthest, and when it stopped. It like stopped on a roundabout but it was somewhere off the beaten track anyway, and the guy had to go to a local family and get their cable, you know, their 3-pin cable, just to try and get it working again. Is that what we're looking at then?
Well, yeah, because funnily enough, Quentin Wilson and Robert Llewellyn both picked up their first electric vehicles at the same time. They had the iMievs, and they both drove them from wherever it was in the Midlands where they picked them up, down towards the Cotswold areas where they lived. And Quentin actually ran out of charge. So he pulled up at the side of the road outside some old lady's house, and he knocked on her door, and he said, "I'm really sorry, I've just got one of these electric vehicles. and I've run out of charge. Can I use your plug? And she went, yeah. So they fed the plug in through the window, and he literally spent a couple of hours sat chatting with her over a cup of tea, waiting for his car to charge.
Oh, I love that. Well, that's one way to get to know people, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. Can you imagine, well-known motoring journalist and TV personality Quentin Wilson knocks on your... can I sit and chat to you for an hour and a half while my car charges?
Yeah.
Now, there is actually...
Can I come and borrow a cup of sugar?
There is actually another way you can charge your car, and it's something that has come more into vogue recently because of the way the technology works. And if you watch Gavin Shoebridge's YouTube channel, he's is he Kiwi EV, works for Ecotricity down in New Zealand. He ran a test where he had one of the BYD Atto 3s, and he ran it right down to zero so that it stopped at the side of the road. And then he got another BYD to come in, and because you've now got vehicle to load, they were able to plug the battery from one into the other and charge from one car to the other through the vehicle to load system.
Oh wow, that's amazing. So it's kind of like jump starting sort of ish.
It's like siphoning petrol from one car and putting it into another one, but they're doing it with electricity
without
instead.
the horrible taste. Not that I ever did that.
Did it once, never again.
Oh my goodness. So, did you? Oh, I can't imagine. No, thank you. So I read recently about it was an AA survey about it was comparing the number of people who break down who've got a petrol or diesel car and the number of people who break down who've got an electric vehicle, because so on the petrol or diesel you'd run out of petrol or diesel, and then the people who did that with electric, apparently it was 2% for both.
Yes, and as I say, I had Edmund. Yeah, I had Edmund on the podcast, and he said that. But what he said, there was an additional thing that doesn't get reported. When somebody calls in with an empty petrol tank, it's because they have an empty petrol tank. Half the people who call into the AA with no charge actually don't have no charge. They've just run so low that they think they're going to run out of charge. Yeah. So it's a subtle difference, but it is a difference. So yeah, it's about 1.5%, 2% of all the calls that they get at the AA are for people who have either run out of charge or have run really low on charge and are concerned that they're not going to be able to get to the next charging stop. And as I say, they come out and they put this little thing on the back, wheel into the next charging stop and plug them in.
But I suppose what I'm saying from this as well is that actually it's really low. It's not, for all the people who worry about the fact that, we're going to run out of charge, actually there's not many people that do that. And kind of, I think the comparison was the people who would do that with the charge are probably the people who would run out of petrol. Now, does that put me in the same... It doesn't put me in the same thing, honestly, because that's a long time ago with my sender unit. Although my husband will probably say otherwise. He'll probably point something at another time that I've done something like that. But majority of the time, I will always make sure that I've got enough, I had enough petrol at the time, and I will do the same with electric.
Yeah, and the other thing that plays into that is because you don't have, for most of the time, you don't have a GOM on a petrol car, you don't really know how much is left in the bottom of the tank. You know when the needle's gone down to the bottom, you know when the little red light's gone on, and in your own mind you go, well, I've got another 10 miles, I've got another 12 miles, and then you find yourself going up a hill, so suddenly you're using a little bit more power, or it starts to rain, or you're in a headwind, and again, these things affect electric cars in the same way they affect petrol cars. So suddenly the 12 miles that you thought you had in the bottom of the petrol tank is down to 6 miles, and you've run out of petrol on the side of the road. So, and that happens a lot less in electric cars because you've physically got the thing saying this is how many miles you've got left, this is the percentage you've got left. You've got the turtle mode that comes up and goes, you need to stop soon, you need to get a charge soon. Don't have that in petrol cars.
No, no, they don't. And I'm glad the sort of that these things are in place to kind of manage it. I was wanting to talk to you about the charging to 80%, right? Because we had a conversation about this when I was having my little flap the other week, going, Gary, can you tell me about what do I need to do? Is it good to do this? Blah 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 blah. Because I know that actually charging up on a rapid charger to 100%. I mean, like we've been talking about earlier, there is that issue that once it gets to 80%, when you want to get the last 20, it'll take forever because you're not really supposed to be doing that on a rapid charger anyway, are you? But what is the rule of thumb about charging an electric car generally?
Well, as with most things, it depends. For the vast majority of cars at the moment, which are lithium-ion batteries, 80% maximum is what you should be aiming for everyday usage. Now, there are certain vehicles, mine's one of them, where you can actually set a thing in there and it says, at 80%, stop the charging. So when I'm charging at home, it gets to 80% overnight and it stops. But of course, if you've got a battery that'll do 200 odd miles and you're only using 80% of it, then you're kind of thinking, well, why have I got a battery that's so big? Why don't I use a smaller battery? So if you know you're going to be using that charge, you know you're going to be going on a long distance, you can absolutely charge it to 100%. It's not going to be an issue. The problem comes when you always charge it to 100% and then never go anywhere. Because if you keep a battery at 100% for a prolonged period of time, doesn't do the battery any good. And again, Dr. Maturk will give you all the details, but I think the analogy that he gave to me, he said it's like filling a water bottle with water. If you keep putting the water in and it gets full, you start to put a bit of pressure on the side of the bottle, and it's not always that good. One of these plastic Evian bottles or whatever, it's just putting the pressure on. But if you only put 80% in, it's not providing that level of pressure on the battery. Now, where that changes is when you get the new lithium, the LFP batteries. What is it? The ones that are basically in some of the new Teslas and the new MGs, because you can run them up to 100% without any problem because they don't have the same sort of chemistry inside. So the long story short is, if you don't know what kind of battery you've got in your electric vehicle, just do it to 80% unless you really need the 100 to go on a long journey. And that's basically the shortcut for it.
Yeah, because I got back from Coventry yesterday and I had 35%. We charged it on cheap rate with Octopus between 2 and 5 this morning, and it's just so it was 35%. It's now up to just under 80%. But I know that I'm not going anywhere particularly. We might just go to the shops. There's a few things I've got to go and get with my son, but the biggest thing that I need to know that I've got that more a range available when I go to Coventry next week, because I want to make sure that I've kind of got a full charge then, just so that I don't put myself through that stupidity that I had the other week with getting all stressed out. But I think over time, and I hope everybody else who's kind of listening and watching this who actually is starting on the same journey as me, over time, I can imagine that I'll get it. I'll know exactly what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. In the same way as that I did with my petrol car. It's taking that bit of time to get used to it, isn't it? And sort of work out, right, okay, when do I need to charge? How far do I need to charge? How long will it take me? I mean, my husband kind of goes, oh yeah, well, you do it in that because that's that and that's this. And I'm kind of, he's a maths geek, I call him, so actually for somebody like me, I need to actually physically see it happening. Like yesterday he was kind of saying to me, well, we probably don't want to charge it now because the battery from the solar, isn't full. And I went, yeah, but I just want to see this happen. I want to see what happens so that you could say that you're wrong, Liz, you shouldn't have put it on charge. This stuff like that, that's just how I work. So yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a suck it and see how it goes. But so far, it's not bad at all. it's just managing my expectations and our family's expectations, and
Yeah.
working out what the network can provide us if I have to go on a public charging, into the public charging network,
And
what our Zappi will do.
yeah, and a lot of it is just it's the fact that it's unfamiliar. It's it's the first time you've had an electric car. You're unsure about how fast it charges. You're unsure about what the public network's like. You're unsure about what you could do with AC. You're unsure about what percentage you need to do it to. And, these are perfectly valid concerns to have about an electric car. And as you say, you're the kind of person who will go through and say, well, I need to charge it to this percentage because I need to know how long it's going to take. I need to put the solar in because I need to know what difference that's going to take. I need to use an AC charger because I need to know the difference between that and a DC charger. I need to use a DC charger because I need to know what speed I'm going to be expecting. It says it's going to give me 150 kilowatts, but when you're on a Hyundai Ioniq, one of the ones you've got, you're not going to get 150 kilowatts because it's capped at whatever that speed is. I
40.
forget off the top of my head.
It's 40.
Which is not great, but so what? If you know it's 40, it means you'll get to one of the 50 kilowatt chargers. You'll use that instead. You'll free up 150 kilowatt to somebody who needs that, and it's not going to affect your charge speed at all.
Exactly. And I think a lot of the other thing is about what you're just saying about freeing it up. Like I was kind of saying earlier, it's about that. It's understanding what the etiquette is. I wrote something about charging etiquette the other week.
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of joking, saying, is it going to be like cashier number 2? Kind of getting people to come over, especially if you've got queues and things like that. It's about understanding, right, okay, what is the right thing to do? How, and actually not kind of clogging up a charger if you don't need it, using the right one. So it is a little bit of kind of, just to see how things go over time. And I like the fact I love learning. It's something, when I learn, I like to share. That's just how I am. And I think over time I'll be able to look back on this and kind of go to people who are starting their journey where I am now in future, and be able to hopefully kind of give them some thoughts on the same way as you are with me.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole etiquette aspect it's fraught with difficulties, because you would think it would be the kind of thing that anybody with common sense would understand and adhere to. But, as my dad said, if common sense was common, everybody would have it. And of course they don't, which is why you get people sitting there at 95% in their car, blocking a charger with, it's pulling 12 kilowatts at the charge, and you go, excuse me, do you mind moving on? No, I need 100%. And he's kind of, well, you don't. Unless you're in a 24 kilowatt hour Nissan Leaf that'll do, 80 miles on a charge, you don't really need 100%. And it's going to take you just that long to get to that extra between 80 and 100%. Move off, free it up, stop somewhere else further down the line. You'll get that extra 20% equivalent a lot quicker when you've run your car down to 40% or 30% than it would staying at 80 and trying to go up to 100. Then you've got the whole the queuing etiquette. Well, okay, so do you queue for a charger if there's 3 or 4, or do you queue for the first available one? And what happens if you're in a Nissan Leaf and you need a Chadabo connector, but the first available one that comes free only has 2 CCS connectors? How do you deal with that? Fraught with difficulties. The nearest I've come to understanding what would work well is, and I forget who it was, but I was chatting with someone and said, oh yeah, we've got an app that allows you to book a charger in advance. And I said, well, how does that work? Because if the charger's available and you're 3 miles out and somebody comes in, it's got a little barrier that comes up. So it blocks it, and then when you get in there, you hit the app and it drops it down so you can get in. So you're actually pre-booking a slot at a specific charger in advance, and it knows that when that charger becomes free and the last car pulls off, the barrier goes up so that you can come in and use it when you want. But of course there's a huge cost implication to that, because you've got to put the barriers in, you've got to get them all connected up, you've got to get the app working correctly. It's an extra app to put onto your phone, so there's always downsides to it. But these are the kind of things that need to be thought through formalised, and if you start using ANPR and charging people overstay fees or queue jumping fees or whatever, there's got to be a way of making this happen, because if you rely on people's goodwill, then only the people with goodwill will make it work, and everybody else will just screw it up.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, it's I totally get the kind of the whole putting a barrier up, but that means it's going to be like, when you if you've seen small children learning how to go down, play bowl, down a bowling alley, it'd be a bit like having the children's sides up there, wouldn't it? And actually that again has the knock-on effect with accessibility as well, doesn't it?
Now, yes, it does, but I would suggest there are far more issues with accessibility that need to be sorted out before we start worried about that.
Yeah, true.
There's a lot of work that Kate Tyrrell and her friends are doing with ChargeSafe about, how poor the general charger situation is from an accessible point of view. It's getting better, but it's still a long way to go.
But going back to what you were saying about 100% though, and somebody sitting on that charger to 100%, has anybody actually ever told them that they shouldn't be charging to 100%? That would be my main concern. Is it because when they pick the car up from the dealership, nobody ever taught to them, or wherever they've got it from the leasing company or wherever, has anybody actually taught to them, like, we're having that conversation now, what is the best way to actually charge your car? What you should be charging it up to, how often you should be charging, that kind of stuff. Is that in the general domain outside? People don't know what they don't know. That's the main thing, isn't it?
And there are two aspects to this. One is, how are people being educated? And two is, who's doing the education? Now, for example, I'm on my second electric vehicle. Both of them rolled up at my house on the back of flatbeds. The guy unloaded them, put it into my drive, signed off the documentation, gave me the keys. He said, there you go. Because he's the guy who delivers the vehicles. He doesn't know the detail about charging to 80% versus charging to 100%, AC versus DC, public charging versus private. He doesn't know that. And I would suggest that a large number of people, especially if it's not a second-hand car, a large number of people who are buying or leasing or salary sacrificing new electric vehicles will be in a very similar situation. They will be delivered to them on the back of a flatbed, whether it's at home or at office.
Yeah, ours was.
And there will not be that level of education. And then the related side to that is, you go to the dealer, and supposing you're picking your car up at the dealer, and the dealer's going to do a handoff, and you might get your little bottle of champagne or whatever they decide to do, depending where you go. But are the dealers educated to that level of saying, well, 80% unless you're going on a long distance, if you're charging at a public, get off at 80 because the charge rate drops and it's going to take you as long to get to 100 as it did to get to 80. Do they have that level of knowledge? Do they have the time to impart that level of knowledge? And if they don't, how does somebody get that information? And that's why your podcast, your LinkedIn posts, my podcast, Fully Charged, all that sort of stuff, we're here to try and pass that information across, or at least provide a repository of information where people can go, oh, well, tell me what happens when I run out of charge. Well, it's A, B, or C, that repository of information has to be somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced that it is at the moment. We were lucky because the guy that actually sold us our Hyundai, same as yours, brought it on a flatbed, took my Golf away, I cried. That's another story. Just shed a tear. It was like losing an old friend. But when he brought the Hyundai onto the drive, he did sit and took me through a number of things, both me and my husband, but there were still things that we had to learn. And actually, like I say, that's why I was messaging you, asking you questions about charging and things like that, because it just feels there should be information coming from these people or somewhere, like you said, this central repository that people can go to, because otherwise, like I say, that when I was on the EV rally I was in with Colin Boyton, and kind of we were at a charger in Heathrow, and there was an older couple, and they were hogging the charger. They were already at kind of 85%, and obviously, you know, there's all these cars coming in from the EV rally, and that charger would already been taken up. But did they know? That's the thing, isn't it? You know, so until those dealerships are actually providing that information, or they're pointing them to, you know, in the direction of my podcast, your podcast, fully charged, etc., etc. It's whatever you get told, isn't it?
Yeah. Let me use the phrase that Kate Tyrrell likes me to use, because it's the favourite phrase I use with her, which is, let me play devil's advocate here. Who taught you how to fill up a petrol car?
Oh my God, it's that long ago. I can't remember. I think I watched my dad.
There you go. The vast majority of the things that we learn about petrol cars, fossil fuel cars, we've learned through osmosis, through watching our parents do it, through sort of the driver's education, that sort of stuff. Nothing. The dealers didn't say, when you get to a petrol pump, you've got to press this button, and they don't do that. They've never done that.
True.
So why should they do that for electric cars? Well, in the early stages now, there should be that level of education. But, you know, I take the Jill Knoll attitude on this, which is her kids know how to charge a car because they've seen her do it. They do the charging for her. Yes. She'll pull up, they'll go out, they'll plug it in. They know how it all works. So when they get their own car, they won't have the issues that you and I had when we first got our electric cars.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, if that's 10 years hence, that's when the general, second posh word of the podcast, zeitgeist, when the zeitgeist understands how electric cars work, you don't need that level of education. It's just between now and whenever that point is, we need to start or find some way of getting that education out.
Yeah, no, you're right. And actually, you're right about, so my son already knows. I got him to, I mean, this is only home charging. It's not kind of en route charging. I got him to actually charge the car when it was plugged in. He's go, I don't know what to do. I went, you just get that and you put that in there. It's simple as that. But I do need to teach him how to do the other bits and pieces as well, you know, as in take him to and actually we will be doing this because we're going to Wales at the end of August. So I've already because I told you I like organising these things. I have already organised where we'll be charging, and I know exactly where all the chargers are down the Gower Peninsula, or there's not really many around there, but we've got some on the way, which will be absolutely fine. So yeah, we're all organised. But yeah, you're right. It is about filling that gap for now, isn't it? Until kind of more and more people learn from more and more people.
Osmosis. That's how it is. Osmosis.
Yes, it is. It is. What about tyres? So obviously, I've kind of read that you need special EV tyres. Is that right? Is it because of the fact that they're heavier that you have to have specific tyres for an EV?
No, I think the key word there is, do you need special EV tyres? And the short answer is no, you don't need special EV tyres. There are certain brands or certain makes within certain brands, certain types within particular brands, which are designed for electric vehicles, and they have a lower rolling resistance that, however they're manufactured, it doesn't connect as well with the road or whatever the actual technical thing is. But the long and the short of it is, it provides an easier way of pushing the car forward without causing efficiency problems with the car itself. So, as you all know, efficiency is key with an electric car. So if you've got big, thick I mean, I used to drive German supercars, and you know the tyres on those were 1.5 feet wide, huge amount of surface area, huge amount of resistance on the road. But when you've got a flat six behind you, 3.5 litre, it doesn't really matter that you're losing a bit of efficiency on the tyres. But when it comes to electric cars, you need tyres that have the minimal amount of contact with the road that is safe without having too much, so it's causing drag and slowing the car down, which means that the engine has to work a bit faster. So that's basically it. Most, the Michelins, the Continentals, they'll have low rolling resistance tyres that you can use with electric vehicles, but you don't need them. They're nice to have.
Okay,
well,
that's good.
But you don't need them.
Yeah, that's good to know. And just kind of quickly, what about servicing and things that I have to do kind of on a weekly basis? So obviously with the petrol car, it was checking the tyres, checking the oil, checking the windscreen wash and that kind of stuff. Obviously there's no oil with an electric vehicle. So is it just the other two then?
Well, in many cases, it's not even the other two, because a huge amount of electric cars now have tyre pressure sensors. So they'll tell you when the pressure's gone down in a tyre. And my old Kia, I ran it for 6 or 8 months with a slow puncture in one of the wheels. So I'd pump it up, drive on it every now and again. The little beeper would come up, go low pressure, pump it up again. I was absolutely fine. So I was able to run that for quite a while until it got to the stage where I thought, right, now I probably should replace it, and I got it replaced. But it meant I didn't have to go around and check the pressure on the tyres every week. If it's winter or you're using a lot of wiper fluid, go in and check what's under the bonnet or wherever it is nowadays for the wiper fluid. But that's pretty much it.
Okay. That's good. Well, listen, I suppose finally I need to just be getting everybody to find out where you are. I mean, obviously, if you want to check Gary out and you don't know him already, he's kind of known to so many people in the sector. But if you're outside the sector, then so EV Musings podcast available on what
everywhere
platforms?
You get your podcasts. It's on
everywhere.
Apple, it's on Stitcher, it's on Spotify, it's on Google Play, it's on Overcast, it's on pretty much everywhere.
And finding you elsewhere then, so where would you point people to if they want to kind of get hold of you then?
The podcast webpage is evmusings.libsyn.com, and that has links out to my Twitter account. It has links out to my email, so feel free to email me at any point. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter @musingsev, and I'm usually fairly active on the socials, so I'll get back to you with a reply. It might be quite sarcastic at some point, but I'll definitely get back to you with a reply.
Oh, well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you on it, and
Likewise.
Thank you ever so much. You've given me so much information here. I probably got questions that my husband and my colleague has actually given, and I've not asked you all of them yet, but I'm sure we will be talking again very soon. So maybe kind of in the next 12 months, let's kind of get together again and just sort of see how much knowledge I will then know what an AC charger is. So there'll be so much information that I will be I'll understand, and hopefully kind of moved a lot further on. So Gary, thank you ever so much for joining me. It's been brilliant.
My pleasure, and likewise, and happy to come back on it at any time and chat.
Thank you. Amazing. So to everybody else, I'm going to say thank you for listening and watching, and I shall see you all next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching Electric Evolution Recharge. I hope we've sparked your curiosity and inspired you to make positive changes. I'm Allan, and I'm looking forward to sharing the journey with you. So until next time, bye.